Welcome to the Cutting Room Floor podcast. This is episode 1.5 because we did a good test last week. It's good to be back with you, my love. Glad to have you, Hunter. Glad you're joining the conversation.
Glad to be here. Yeah.
We are coming off, this is Monday morning, bright and early. We're getting this conversation started. And coming off the heels of a great Sunday in the life of our church, we had Vision Sunday this past weekend, and I loved it. Had a lot of fun with it. We talked for a long time.
We did. We went
because
a long,
when you're excited, just a little bit. Sorry to all those that were in the room yesterday. It wasn't our normal flow, but man, when you're excited about something, excited about vision, the future, where God's taking you, it's easy to talk about it. And had a great time. How are you guys doing this morning? It's 9 a.m. How you feeling?
Good. Waking up, got our coffee.
Cheers.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Our baby isn't sleeping, so was up over 2 hours. So this is my third coffee of the day.
Cheers.
But I'm here.
Hey.
I'm ready.
You are. You're looking great.
There's the grace of God. Let's have this conversation.
All right. I love it. Well, hey, and not to start our brand new podcast with a brag, but I'm going to start the brand new podcast with a brag. I got up today. Yeah. This is amazing. We talked about vision yesterday. I'm learning in my own life how to implement vision, how to sustain vision. I'm running a marathon in 4 months.
Yep.
And so today I'm starting a new flow. I got up this morning at 5. I spent some time with God. I had a little food, drank some coffee, drank my electrolytes, and then I went for a run this morning.
Wow.
I ran 3 miles. I fractured my toe, but I taped it up really good, so it was fine. And so I'm coming in full of energy today. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah.
So anyway, talk about vision. All right.
Talk about vision.
Proverbs, we talked about this yesterday. I think it's a good starting point to have a conversation because I think I want to get beyond just vision from a excited for the future sense and get more practical today.
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm living, what I need in a lot of areas of my life. Maybe for our church family that's listening or those that are listening today, maybe some helpful thoughts. But we talked about this yesterday, Proverbs 16:9. Yeah. I love this verse. You're going to read it because it's right in front of you, and for some reason I just forgot it.
I actually have John 17 in front of me.
It says this.
In a man's way.
Come on.
In a man's heart, he plans his way.
Hey, there it is.
But the Lord directs his steps.
That's right. In a man's heart, he plans his way.
Yeah.
So we have responsibility to plan. That's what we did yesterday. That's why we do Vision Sundays every year. But then it's the Lord's responsibility. Yeah. And he does this all the time in our lives, in the small moments and the big ones, to direct our steps. Yeah. And I thought that was a pretty good starting point for us yesterday as a church, because why vision? This is a buzzword in church world and even in the corporate world. There's a lot of hype and self-help books all about vision and about the future, and you're living your best life. And I think all that's really good, but how does that fit into the way of Jesus? Well, I think the Bible shows us is we do have a responsibility to plan our way, to look ahead into our future and every area of our life. As a church family, we're doing this, but in our family, in our personal families, with our children and our marriages, we get to plan. That's a responsibility we get to do. And then I love that thought that God is the one who directs our steps along the plan. So I want to talk about that a little bit. I'm curious to how you guys are feeling after kind of teaching that to the church yesterday. Again, we talked about that big picture church life, but how that's maybe influencing you personally, what it looks like in your own life to plan your way and follow the leading of the Lord. And so, I don't know, I want to kind of cast it over to you guys. What do you guys think about that? How are you kind of responding to that scripture yesterday that we read?
Yeah, I love that scripture that we read, and I think it was good for us to share with the church family, because I think sometimes when we talk about vision and we share plans for the future, there can be so much pressure, and whether that's in a church space or even in your own life of okay, I'm planning this and I'm trying to make this decision, and this is the area I'm going. And sometimes in the Christian world, in the church world, we can overcomplicate things so much. And so we're like, oh, I just need to fast and pray about this decision, or I just need to, I need to really, is this God's will for my life? Am I going to miss it? I hate that phrase, the phrase, I'm going to miss it. Am I going to miss God on this? We have such fear around decisions. And I think that hopefully it was just a bit freeing for people, brought a little bit of peace to people, that God's actually given us the ability through the Holy Spirit to plan our way. And there's creative space in that. As long as, here's what I tell people when we're talking about decisions, or who to marry, or how many kids to have, or what job to take, or what's the direction, what's God's calling for my life. There's so many, life is a million decisions, big and small. And as followers of Jesus, we just want to follow him, and we want to do it well. So there can be pressure in that, but I don't think God intended it to feel that way. I actually think that there's freedom there. And so
let's go. That's good. I love it. I love it.
like the basis is if your heart desires God's will for your life.
Right.
I think that's like number one question.
Yeah.
Like not your will, Lord, but not my will, Lord, but your will be done.
Yeah.
Then I think that from that space that there's a lot of freedom when it comes to our decisions in life. As long as we say, okay, I'm going to play my way, knowing that God, you're actually big enough, you're actually strong enough, you're actually good enough. God, you're actually kind enough to help me on my journey. That as I plan my way, you will come in and you will direct my steps. And you will open doors that only you can open, and you'll close doors that only you can close, and you'll make my path straight. Right? Like even if I get it wrong, which I'm gonna go over here, do this, he's able to make my path straight. To keep me on his narrow road. I think sometimes we overestimate our ability to keep him. And he's actually the one keeping us. Like in John 17, Jesus is talking and he's praying about his disciples, and he said, God, every disciple that you've given me, I have kept them, except for the one talking about Judas. But I have actually kept them. And I think sometimes we overestimate, we overanalyze our like responsibility to keep God. When he's like, hey, I'm keeping you. Like, I've got you in the palm of my hand. My grip on your life is firm. Like, his grip on us is firmer than our grip on him. If we can just relax. Settle into his love. Settle into his peace, knowing that he's got us. Like, if our heart is positioned to follow him, he's got us. And I think you and me, babe, have gone through so many seasons where, you know, we make decisions very differently. And
let's have this conversation.
We make decisions really differently.
What do you mean? Like, what does that mean?
I think that I think that I think that decisions are easier for me. And I think that maybe you wrestle with them a little bit more because you're a perfectionist and you want to get things right. And I'm kind of like, God, you love me. You're going to help me. If I get it wrong, you're going to be there for me. You're going to pick me up. You're going to get me right back on the right path. So
you go with the flow, and I like to grip everything that we're doing.
And I'm like, God's grip on our life is great. We can rest in his love.
But I'm like, my grip is pretty good too.
Your grip is good
I got a
too.
plan.
But when it comes to vision and people's plans for their life, like maybe you can talk about that, because I think sometimes you have certain way you want things to go. You have a plan, and sometimes you want to grip it so tightly, or if it's not going that way, you can feel frustrated. Like you can, I've seen this in you. Like if it's not going the way that you anticipated, or the plan that you have ahead of you, like you can get really frustrated in that space, which I think is what makes you a great leader and a great man of God. You're going after things, but like, what have you learned to do in that space of the in-between of like, I have this plan, I'm planning my way, but it's not like I'm taking steps, but I just can't get there. Like I thought that I was supposed to plan my way. I thought God was going to direct my steps, but I feel like I'm in a stagnant space. Like what do I do? What do I do with that?
That's a great question.
That is a good question. I think I've learned a lot from you. Like I think you've been a gift in my life, because I do think like my background and maybe my like even theological perspective around the will of God. There's that verse in Romans that talks about the good or the acceptable, good, and perfect will of God.
Right.
And I've heard that taught for years, that like literally there's 3 wills of God for your life. That you're either like kind of just in the acceptable.
Like you're good.
If you're like a little more obedient and holy, and like if you fasted like a lot more, then maybe you can get into the good space.
Like you're in the perfect will of God, I'm in the good will of God.
Yeah, but and then if you're like uber spiro, like you're the most spiritual ever, then like you're in the perfect. For me, that created so much pressure for like years of my life. Like it affected our dating relationship. Like, God, is this the perfect will? Like I think
is she
pretty,
the good will, or is the perfect will coming later for me?
And you are the perfect. Come on. But no, seriously, I think for me in following the voice of God, I think I've often felt like it is I'm shooting this arrow and I have all the intentions to hit the mark, but because I know myself and I'm flawed, or like I have doubts, or I sin, or whatever, that I'm somehow going to miss it. I'm going to end up dissatisfied in the vision God has for me and the future God has for me. And I think I've had to learn a lot in life that, someone said this years ago to me. They said, Eric, you walk with God like the highway you're on only has one lane. And that if you don't get on the perfect lane, then you're not going to make it to the destination God's taking you. And then they said, but Eric, I think God's will for your life is a lot more like an 8-lane highway.
Yeah.
You just got to get in one of the lanes, commit to it. They're all going in the same direction.
Yeah.
And what that did for me is help me to learn to take the pressure off.
Yeah.
That God's not like this taskmaster in heaven that's giving us a tightrope constantly to navigate with our marriages, with our families, with small decisions around, should I invest finance there, invest finance there? Should I pursue this goal in my heart this year or not? Like that there's actually more margin, there's more latitude with the will of God in our lives. And I think you hit the nail on the head that I've had to learn, like it comes back to the space of my heart. If my heart and my motives are getting off, if I'm pursuing vision, if I'm dreaming about the future, and it's all about making Eric's world big, making me a big deal, or that there's selfish motives, that maybe there's some stuff God wants to cut off the edge there. But I think when I know, no, God, my heart is right. There's probably a few options we could navigate. There's a few things we could do. I'm going to start planning my way. I'm going to start doing. I'm going to start walking it out. And I've learned to trust God is so faithful to direct every step of the way. And so I've had to let go of the grip a little bit. I've had to take off the fear mindset in God's will and plan a purpose for me. And as I do that, regularly do that, it creates margin, latitude, freedom, joy. Like the fruit of that space I've found for me is so much more beneficial. And I think the fruit in other people's lives around me is beneficial. So I don't know. I think that's how probably I'm still real time learning that, walking that out. I can find myself going back to those old places of thinking. And that's, again, I'm perfectionist mentality kind of mindset. I can be type A. I care, that's my whole thing, right? Like our whole staff can't, they probably love that word and hate that word. Because I really, I talk with it a lot. I want everyone to care. If you don't care.
I want you to care like I care.
If you don't care like I care, then you're wrong. So I
want you to care exactly how I care.
I want you to care how I care, when I care, the way I care. And if you don't do it, then, you're like, wow, it's hard. It must be hard to work for you. And maybe it is. Hunter, you can tell us. But anyway, I think that's what I'm learning is kind of letting go of control a little bit. But anyway, how do you feel about that? Planning God's way. What does it look like in your life, Hunter?
Yeah, I think I lean more to your personality a little bit. I'm quite performance. I'm just now learning this. I'm quite performance driven. So if I don't see something very quickly, readily panning out for me, I have a hard time with it. And so I think along the way of knowing the Lord, I've come to realize that there just really are wise decisions. God's will in and of itself is wisdom. So finding, the good and perfect will of God is really dating is probably the most practical to many. It's man, I just want to, this is the second most important decision I'm going to make in my life, who I decide to spend my life with. And you just wrestle so much. And when you desire so much to, follow the Lord. And so I think I realized early on that I just needed to make a wise decision, and that God actually has multiple wise decisions, but he has as I follow his leading and commune with him and listen to him, I just have to take steady steps forward. So as you were talking, a verse that came to mind was Proverbs 3:5-6. It says,
that's so
trust
good.
in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And submit to him all your paths, and he'll make your way straight. Something to that effect.
Nailed it.
No, I think that's so good. Okay, actually, I have a question for you, Hunter.
Yeah.
Because I think this is good. So Hunter just got married. Yeah. How many months has it been? She just got married.
October 20th. That was the date. October.
And you are in your late 20s, right? You haven't. Yeah, you're in your late 20s.
Almost 30. Yeah.
Almost 30. Yep. And you have seen a lot of your friends get married.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of the people around you find their spouse, but it took you in your maybe desire a little bit longer than you were anticipating or than what you were looking for. Yeah. And I'm sure that in that space you had a vision. I did. I'm sure that in that space you had a vision for what your spouse would be like and what your life would be like and what your marriage one day would be like. And when you were single, just feeling so far from that reality. But you had that vision, and sometimes in that space it can be, you can feel despair. Yeah. Because you're like, God, is this ever going to happen? Am I ever going to find a spouse? Yeah. But you can also be like, okay, I'm going to hold tight to what God's given me, to his promises. And so there's such maybe a roller coaster, and not even in a bad way, but just the highs and lows of emotion in that waiting period between what you feel like the promise he's given you, the vision you see, and having that come to pass. Can you just speak to that a little bit? Because I think that a lot of our church, we have a multi-generational church. Some people won't necessarily resonate with this, but I think that a lot of people will. We have a lot of people who are looking for their spouse in that single season, trying to be content, but also really trying to pray their spouse into their lives and are waiting for that moment. So could you just speak to that even a little bit of how that waiting season was for you and like how you got a vision for what was to come and all of that?
Yeah, I think first off, like, I think just taking the pressure off, I think realizing, like, you have to be aware of, like, the kingdom way is different than the world's way. And so in a lot of ways, like, we just are formed. I think, like, the people that come to mind are 20-something people. And just in the nature of college and, you know, you feel like you have to be a millionaire by your 30 and you're so trained in how you go to school and, like, things are just going to click along as you graduate college. All these things are going to come immediately after.
Like,
you
it's all supposed to happen like
that.
that.
Like, there is just a timeline. And so I think you just have to learn, and it just comes day by day. Like, you have to take the pressure off and fully accept and, like, enjoy, kind of, like, revel a little bit in the fact that, like, no, it actually is like an adventure with the Lord. And every day, and you're not less holy or righteous if you're having, like, you actually are called to surrender every single day, every moment, every thought, every dream, every vision, every step. Like, you just need to get in the habit of surrendering everything. And so I think specific to marriage and my spouse, I came to a point where I realized, like, Lord, like, you're better than the best thing I could ever have. Like, you really gotta just.
Well, that's
and
great.
so even because
you're better than marriage.
Because it's crazy, like, how quickly, even after getting married, that promise, I'm like, okay, what's next? Like, we gotta start a family. Like, we gotta build up, you know, our retirement plan. We have to do all of these things, and you can get and being performance minded, I'm like, okay, I gotta do these things because that's the next thing. And, you know, it's kind of what you two were speaking to yesterday too, like, we can't just, like, live and let live. I think you have to, in surrendering every single day and just letting the Lord be your vision. And he has a specific one for you, a specific one for your household, for your marriage. And it's a joy in finding that and, like, learning to love that. And then when you do that, only then can you, like, steward the responsibility. And then your eyes become, like, on the lanes that you have. It's not looking to your left and your right and what are they doing and all those things. So
I think that's so good. It reminds me of I think that's so good, Hunter. It reminds me of a verse in the Psalms. I don't remember exactly what verse it is off the top of my mind, but I believe it's David saying, because your love is better than life. My lips will glorify your name. And I think it's getting that place of, like, no, God, like, your love actually is better than life. And it's better than anything life can offer. And your love is better than a future spouse. Your love is better than future kids. Your love is better than this career goal that I have. Your love is better than my retirement's going to look like in the future. Like your love's actually better than everything that the world can offer. But in your love, you care about all those things for me, right? Like, you care about the details of my life. You know the amount of hairs I have on my head. Like, in your love, you want to help me. In your love, you care for me. In your love, you're going to provide for me. But at the end of the day, your love is better than life.
Right?
And I don't want anything with life to rival the satisfaction that only your love can give me. Like, even if I'm single, I'm waiting for a spouse. Your love is better than the spouse I'm waiting for. Your love is better than the kids I'm praying for. Your love can satisfy me. And I think that, you know, until you get to that space, I think it's a wrestle. It's a continual wrestle in the waiting. Until you surrender that the love of God is actually better than anything that we can experience.
I think that's so good. Like, I mean, there's so much to that. Like, because, you had said it, like, looking in other lanes. I think sometimes we draw a vision for our life, which isn't always bad. I think it's important to have examples. It's important to look in someone else and see what's possible and then say, God, how could that outwork in my life? But I also got to be careful there because I think there's a fine line where we get really into comparison. We get really into wanting someone else's calling. We get really into assuming the grass is greener if I had their life.
Totally.
And
and can I even jump in? And then we're discouraged, and not because God isn't fulfilling the vision he has for life, it's because we're in comparison.
Because he's not fulfilling the vision in our life he has for their life. And I think that's huge. And so I think there's something about saying, no, God, like, no matter what my future looks like, I know it's going to be good because you're going to be in it. And it's not good based on the amount of money I have or the marriage that I could, you know, have, or maybe I'm not there yet, or the amount of kids, or if I get to retirement by this age, or if I get promoted to this level. Like, God, my future is is good because your love's better than life.
Yeah.
So I think that's strong. I think that's a constant place in a lot of areas in our life to come back to that. That hopefully doesn't make us get bogged down or not go after things, but it does satisfy what our hearts long for because it's all found in him anyway.
Yeah.
But I wanted to pivot the conversation though,
pivot.
because I think this is great. This is about, getting to the place of the dream, maybe that space in between. And but I think you said something interesting that I've found in my own life is a great reminder. You talked about in marriage, like how I had this dream for so long, and you could pick your dream, pick
fill in the blank.
Maybe what the scale needs to say, or maybe how, again, money's an easy one to come back to for a lot of us, how big our bank accounts need to be, or the type of career that we'll be in, or launching a business or dream home or whatever. Like pick your dream. I think it's easy to fantasize about that at such a level, and you long for it, you want it, you feel discouraged, you're not there yet. But then what happens when you get there?
Right.
And how quickly a couple things can happen. How quickly what we got, what we were longing for, we find out it's really not that cool.
You should share.
I'm gonna.
Okay.
It's really not that great. Or we get there and we find out, I thought like my problems would go away when that happened. I thought that would fix like how I was feeling.
I thought I'd feel differently.
I'd feel differently. Space. And you find out, no, this thing I was chasing after and wanting and longing for, if I find out it's actually just a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's like there's some things there that I don't like.
Yeah.
And
can I have a new dream?
Yeah, can I have a different dream?
Vision?
God, this isn't what
God, I'm looking for an alternate.
You
vision.
answered my prayer, Lord, but it's not what I was wanting.
Yeah.
And how quickly we complain about the things we prayed for.
Yeah.
We do this all the time.
Yeah, we do this all the time.
So I yesterday, before church, I got up early. It was a really rough night with the kid. As James is just navigating, he's not feeling well, so he was up like all night. And so between Alexa and I, and she's the hero of the home in this regard, we just didn't sleep. And it's like it's Vision Sunday. We have a lot we have to bring. Vision. Wake up. Hi, church. Today we're gonna share the vision. Like you're trying to wake up and again, it's our responsibility to bring. We're not waiting for someone else to bring. We're walking into the room and we bring.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, God, help me. So I got into our shower and I'm getting ready for the day and I'm praying and I'm not really praying for you, church. I'm praying for me. Lord, help me. But I had this question to God and to myself. I said, Lord, this is what the dream looked like? Here we find ourselves. We're married. We have 2 beautiful children that we prayed for. It took us a while to get pregnant with James, and he's such a gift from God to us. We're leading the church. How many Vision Sundays I sat in with a church in my heart, a vision in my heart. I craved. I prayed, God, I can't wait for the day that we get the chance, God, to lead a church community of our own. How many times I wanted to be able to be in the space we are. There's sense calling and purpose, not just selfishly, vision in our heart. And yet here I am now. I've woken up and I'm exhausted. I feel a lot of pressure. It's a vulnerable place to share vision. That'd be a great conversation, the vulnerability of vision. It's vulnerable because you're going to get up in front of thousands of people and you're going to tell them about what God's going to do in the future. I can't promise it, but I believe God's going to do it, so I'm going to be the guy that says it. And yet here I am early in the morning, exhausted. I just want a nap. I want someone else to do Vision Sunday today. That's how I'm feeling. And this is what the dream looks like? So maybe let's have that conversation because I think there's something about vision. And when you walk in it, how 2 things. I think it always requires more work than you realized. It's in the doing. Vision's accomplished in the doing. I think sometimes we can be surprised. And I think it's all about the ability to sustain it. Hey, we got there, we reached the dream, but then continuing to walk it out into the future. I think it's an important conversation. So let's chat about that. I'm curious to your thoughts. What are your thoughts? How do we sustain vision? What happens when we get to the dream and it's not what it was cracked up to be? How do we make sure that we don't lose hold of it, that we don't complain about it? What does that look like for you?
I think a good example is in your marriage, right? You you just said, Hunter, you have all this anticipation, this idea of what your marriage is going to be like, and oh my gosh, life is just going to be perfect when I get married, and then you get married and you realize that you're just two imperfect human beings who actually have to put a lot of work into having a great and beautiful marriage. And so, like, you know, is this the dream, God? I've been dreaming about marrying you since we were 17. And then we get married and realize, okay, we actually need to, like, do the work in order to have the marriage that we envision. So we need to go on date nights. We need to talk. We need to communicate. We need to fight. We need to work things out. We need to apologize. We need to forgive one another. Like a lot. Like a lot and a lot and a lot. And we work together and we do everything together, which is the biggest blessing. But like I think that unless you think something is precious, you won't think it's worth the work. And so if you're in your marriage and you're like, this is not what I was anticipating. I was expecting it to be different than this. I was expecting it to be easier than this. I was expecting it to feel more graced than this. I want to encourage you, like, do the work. If it's precious to you, you'll care for it. If it matters to you, you'll work at it. And if it doesn't, then you'll slowly lose that desire to work at it. And I think that the vision that you once had, like Eric said yesterday, vision leaks. So the vision you once had for your marriage, it will just slowly, without you even realizing it, start to fade away. And then you're in a bad space and you're like, wow, we really got to work at this. Wow, we really need to get into counseling. Wow, we really need to, like, what happens? Well, you didn't do the work. So you didn't get to the place where God had for you because you didn't do the work. And I think that can work itself out in so many areas of our lives when it comes to the calling, the passions, the things we have in our hearts. You know, I talk with all these young people. What do you feel like God has for you? I mean, just the out of the abundance of their heart, they're filled with passion and vision. And, well, I think that what if we could do this? And, like, I want to change the world. And then I find them 5 years later and, hey, what's God doing in your life? Well, it's going good. I'm just doing this, and I thought that maybe one day God would have this for me, but I'm just, you know, I feel like this was what, you know, this, I'm just doing this. And it's like, well, did you guard your calling? Was that precious to you, that promise that God spoke to you, that he said, hey, I actually have this for you. I have a specific assignment for you. Did you guard that? If that was precious to you, you would have put the work in. So I think it just matters, like, it all comes down to, like, how precious are things to you in your life from God? And when they're precious, we'll guard them.
No, I'm feeling it this way, and this is like the preacher in me, you know, wanting to put this into a sermon. It's like, like there's things that we wait for. There's wonder in our heart for the future. And sometimes I think what we don't realize is what we're waiting for is actually just a whole lot more work.
Totally.
And we want it to be the fulfillment. We want it to be the end-all, be-all. We want it to be, but really, it's just work. And what the marriage looks like, what the family dynamic, what the business looks like for a church as a pastor, what the future of our church, this vision to see 10,000 people make a decision for Christ by the year 2030. The reality is that's not just us sitting in a prayer closet. I'm a huge prayer, massive, believe with all my heart. Prayer, and we need to pray along those lines. Lord, send laborers. But here's the deal: we are the laborers.
And
we're the workers.
Labor.
They labor. Like, there's work to be done. And so it's great to say, hey, I got this dream. We're going to see 10,000 decisions for Christ. I hope what everyone's hearing is, all right,
we have to preach the gospel.
We got a lot of work to do.
We got to get 10,000 people.
We got to have coffees and lunches and dinners and invitations and share. We got to do some work. And I think there's in our life, I think maybe in every season, there's going to be a recommitment to the work it's going to take to see, you know, continue to walk in the vision God has for you.
I think that's really good. And I just want to add one more thing, because I think that we feel this a lot. But sometimes when you're in that season where you actually are in the promise fulfilled, you're taking steps towards the vision you feel like God has for your life, you can feel like in the day-to-day things feel very natural. Very natural, right? You're like, I don't feel like there's anything supernatural about
the mundane
this. This feels very
rhythm.
natural. I'm just waking up, doing the mundane, putting my hand to the plow, loving my kids, loving my spouse, asking God to put his hand on it. Like, it just feels very natural. Like, on Vision Sunday, as we were preparing, it wasn't like we felt, oh, this is a supernatural Sunday. This is just a special, like our feelings were the same. And I think when we looked ahead, before we had taken over the church and transitioned it, we were like, oh, things are going to feel differently. They felt the same. Things are natural. It actually didn't, we might have felt more weight on our lives than what we're carrying. But, like, we actually felt the same. Our day-to-day life felt really natural. But when I look back, at the years, the 2 years behind us, 2023 and 2022, it wasn't natural.
Yeah, God was in it.
It was supernatural.
Yeah.
God was actually in it, and he was doing what only he could do, and he was making a way that we couldn't make. And I look back on the things that he did that I felt like they were natural.
Wow.
But he was actually moving.
Yes.
And I think that that's in his goodness and in his kindness, we can look back and see that.
Yep.
And so when it feels natural right now in your career, in your job, and what we're doing, I'm prepping for this message. It just feels natural.
Yep.
It just feels natural.
Just doing the work.
I'm just doing the work. I'm putting my hand to the plow. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep showing up.
Yeah.
I think that when we do that, we'll eventually be able to know, looking back, that it's not just natural.
Yeah.
Right.
That God is able to put his hand on it, to use it, to work. Like we feel our realities, but we don't feel other people's.
Yep.
So we're coming, I'm just bringing this word. I'm bringing this message today. I just, it isn't even great. It's just the best I could do. But he's actually going to use that because his word is going forth and it's going to help people and minister to them. And that's the supernatural part. And so I look back and I'm like, no, it wasn't just natural.
Wow.
So I think that gives me peace knowing like, okay, tomorrow's just going to be another day. Like we're just going to keep showing up. While we've got kids who aren't sleeping. I'm exhausted. I'm just going to keep showing up.
Yeah.
It just feels natural. But I know that it's not.
Yeah.
I know that God's in it.
Yeah.
And I know that he's adding his super to my natural, and he's actually going to use everything that just feels natural in a way that only he can.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's so
I think
good.
that's so good and so encouraging. And you're right.
Yeah.
We see God moving in our lives often
And when we look back.
when we look back.
Yeah.
So don't feel discouraged
Yep.
that today
Totally.
you feel maybe distant. Today you feel like, God, are you there?
Yeah.
Today you feel like it's quiet. Today it's just a Monday,
Yeah.
mundane.
It's
It is a
mundane
Monday.
Yeah.
It's a mundane Monday
Yeah.
where you got to do some work.
Yeah.
And keep going after it.
Yeah.
Keep getting up early.
Yeah.
Go for your run.
Yeah.
Because in the looking back, you realize what God was doing. He was
Yeah.
there the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a pretty good pausing point
think so,
today
too.
on this conversation around vision.
Yeah.
What is the vision you have for your life? That's a great question to ponder. I think
What do you
today,
see?
this week, this next month, maybe get together with your spouse, get together with the Lord, get together with some friends, have this conversation.
Yep.
What do you see?
Yeah.
And let's celebrate what we see.
Mm-hmm.
Let's celebrate the vision we see in others. And then let's just commit. We're going to sustain it. We're
Yep.
going to go on the journey. We're going to do the work.
Yep.
And then all of us will get to look back at different demarcation points in our life and say, wow, God, you're there the whole time.
Totally.
So good.
Love it.
Love
Final
it.
comments?
No.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Can't wait
All
to
right,
see
y'all. Love you guys. Love you both.
Yep.
And church family, have a great week.
Have a great week.
Can't wait to see you guys soon.
Yeah.
Share this with a friend.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm not like big like.
We don't.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But if you want to
I guess
share
like
it,
if you really like it.
if you like it, it'd
I
be
don't know.
great for you to like
Yeah.
it, and then
Love
tell
it.
someone about it. It'll
Yeah.
help others to listen.
Yeah.
And we'll
see
see
you
you.
Sunday.
See you Sunday.
Let's
Love ya.
go.